Welcome back to Tie That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good buddy who's in a great mood and up spirits and really positive and just feeling good about life. Timothy Franck. Say hello to our fans, Timothy Franck.
Hello.
Does it feel weird calling them fans? I mean, it's really just us hanging out talking about movies. I mean, I
don't think we have fans. I think what we have is like other people at the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're at the bar having a conversation and people are listening in, they're not your fan. They're just,
they're just hanging out with you. So we should call them friends. With like our
I think everybody who comes to this podcast should be called a barfly.
The barfly? Our barflies?
The barflies.
All right. Hanging out with our barflies.
Yeah.
Today we're doing The Last of Us, episode 3. Please hold my hand.
No, it's episode 4.
Same thing. And a little Hank Williams on this one. As soon as that Hank Williams came on, I was like, I wonder what Todd thinks about this. Was that in the video game?
Maybe. I know that Joel was into old country in the game too, but I don't remember if that particular song was in there. It might have been though. It might have been. I remember in the game when you're in the truck, there's a scene where she puts a tape in and some old country starts playing, and yeah. That's interesting because what I wanted to talk about this episode was adaptation and the ways that this show is adapting the video game. Having worked on an adaptation for 6 years, I feel like I have some insight into the adaptation process, and it's really amazing to me what these guys are doing, adapting the video game story. And the video game was basically like almost like a movie in its own right, a TV show in its own right, and then turning that into an actual TV show. They're making some really interesting choices. After last week, because Bill is in the game, he's a very minor character, and mostly what you learn about him is you learn about him by like going through his stuff, and you find the Playgirl magazine, and you find that kind of stuff, and so you learn about Bill that way. And Frank really isn't in the game at all, really. I mean, I think he might have been mentioned by name, but he doesn't show up. But then they turned that into the beautiful story last week of Frank and Bill and their story. So they take this thing that's hinted at in the game and turn it into this important set piece in the show. And then this week, there's a sequence in the game that is almost exactly like the sequence in this week's episode, where they're driving through the city and they get attacked by scavengers. Right up to the sequence inside when they crash into that building through the windows and the truck is inside the building and they're hiding behind the truck. That sequence is almost shot for shot a sequence in the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So they kind of have moments where they like give respect to the game and like something really cool for the gamers to like see. But then they also have enough in there where you're surprised and where it's something. But there's enough story there and enough new characters and stuff. So the people that play the game, it's not like they're going to know every single move or everything that happens. Like there's still some.
That's right. What they do is they take things that harken back to the game, and as a player of the game, you go, "Oh man, I remember that. I remember when that." I think the way that they wind up in that building is a little different. I think in the game, a vehicle slams into them from the side and knocks their truck. Instead of just going across the spike track like they do in the show. But it's the same thing. You wind up in this building, you wind up out of the truck, there's guys shooting at you, and you're kind of hiding in this building as guys come in to try to get you. Like it felt like watching somebody play the game at that point. But then we can go through the episode, but at the end of the episode, they're setting something up that, again, feels like it's straight from the game, but with an added twist, like this other level on top. So when we get to the end, I'll talk about that.
Okay. This is an episode where we really start to see them bonding, and they really make a big journey within this, with their relationship with each other. And I think I don't know if it's in the book, but what I thought was really smart is like the book of puns as a barometer as their relationship evolves.
Which, by the way, that's from the game.
Is it from the game?
Yeah, Ellie will tell you jokes as you're playing. She's following you around telling you jokes from her pun book.
But is it kind of like a barometer of you can see how their relationship's evolving?
It is. But the other thing too is, and again, this is an adaptation thing. When you're playing the game, you're having a personal reaction to what's happening in the game rather than watching someone else have a reaction, right? And one of the things that happens is Ellie is so charming and engaging and funny with her little joke book, you can't help but like her.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're playing the game and you're like, I can't help but like this kid. She's awesome.
Yeah.
She's telling jokes and she's laughing about stuff.
Yeah.
Like when she finds that Playgirl magazine in the truck and she's like, oh my God, how do you walk around with that thing?
Yeah.
Right? That's funny, right? I'm laughing my ass off playing the game. And what they're doing is they're taking the player's reaction to Ellie from the game and they're giving it to Joel. You see Joel start to warm up to her. How can you not?
How could you not? Yeah.
There's no way to not warm up to her. She's so funny and she's so charming and so engaged with the world in sort of a childlike way.
Yeah.
That you can't help but love her.
She's having a good time. You know, there's moments where he tries to kind of double down and get back control, like the moment when she said, "Am I family?" He's like, "No, you're cargo. You're not family." But as the series progresses, you see her getting to him because, you know, her charm offensive and her just having such a good time is so infectious.
Yeah.
What I like too is like the combination of her not being a bit naive because she's never lived in the real world, a bit naive about certain things that used to be in the real world, like flying airplanes and things like that.
Yeah.
But she also has enough knowledge. Like she's like, why are the pages stuck together? You know, and then he's like, I'm just fucking with you, and then throws this thing on the thing. So she also knows enough. She can play with that. She knows enough to like where she can fuck with him because it's making him feel awkward. And
I was very impressed. She has good trigger discipline, which she apparently learned at the Fedra Academy.
What I want to talk about is the logistics around the infected. So when they're in remote areas, he tends to not be as worried about the infected.
Yeah.
And so how does the infected kind of gravitate towards the cities, or like why are they not in the wilderness?
The infection spread most quickly in the cities, obviously. And the infected, at least in the game version, and I think they're doing the same thing in the show. They haven't spent as much time with it, but the infected at the end of their life cycle tend to try to find dark, damp, hidden places to finish their life cycle. When Tess and Joel were going through the building, going out of the building in the first episode, and they find that guy who's sort of just like grown across the wall, that's sort of the end of the infected life cycle, is they turn into that. Now, the thing they do in the game, which I have not seen them do in the show yet, is when the infected reach that point in the game, they start giving off clouds of spores. And if you breathe those spores, you'll get sick and die. Mm-hmm. So in the game, every time you're in those enclosed spaces, you put on a gas mask so that you don't breathe the spores in. They haven't ever done that in the show, but they definitely seem to be following that same life cycle where the infected are going into these dark, damp places to finish out their infection cycle.
Yeah.
And so because of that, cities wound up with lots of infected finishing their life cycle because there's lots of dark places for them to get into. And the sun is bad for them, so they don't want to be out in the open. So it makes sense that there's more of them in the city, you know, just the population density, a lot of dark places for the infected to hide in, you know, that kind of stuff.
It was really nostalgic to see people reading maps again, you know, and I thought about it. I was like, damn, like when is the last time you've like looked at a map? You know, all you do is put an address on your phone and you just get there. And sometimes it's almost like you have an automatic driver because you're not using the front part of your brain. It's your subconscious that's driving. So you can like, I'll get in the car and I'll be listening to something on the phone and, you know, following MapQuest, and you get there and you're like, how the fuck did I get here? Like I could not get in the car and drive back to wherever I came from because I was so tuned out in the drive.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's actually problematic for me because I moved to a new area and I live out kind of in the country. I live up on a mountain. You know, I'm 20 minutes from town, but it's still kind of out on country roads and stuff. And so whenever I had to go somewhere, I would just pop it into my phone and do that. And I realized after months of living up here, I didn't know how to fucking get into town from my house because of exactly what you're saying. I was just on autopilot. Right. And so I made a conscious decision to try and follow the route without using the phone to build the memory of how to get to places. Because if you do it, if you just follow those phone directions, you build no memory of how you got there.
Yeah.
Janae and I keep, I think it's called a Thomas Guide. It's like every map for the whole entire United States. It's a book. And so it's every map for the entire continental United States with some close-in maps for like cities like LA and Chicago and New York and that kind of stuff. And we keep that even though we don't need it anymore. And part of the reason we keep it is exactly this. Like, if there's an apocalypse, I want to have a fucking map of the entire United States at my fingertips that I can get to wherever I need to get to when there's no cell service. And I know there's no chance of that happening, but I keep it anyway because, like, there's
no
like
chance
this
of
little
what?
part.
An apocalypse?
Yeah, there's this little part in the back of my brain that like refuses to believe that there's not going to be an apocalypse at some point.
I don't know if there's no chance.
It's very unlikely.
Yeah, I'm sure the Romans didn't think that the Rome was ever going to fall as well.
It took 1,000 years.
I mean, it won't happen in our lifetime, but eventually there's going to be an apocalypse some way or somehow. Whether the sun blows up or something.
Well, if the sun blows up, you won't need a map.
No, you need a map to the spirit world. And then, so, that sequence that you were talking about, that was the same when they go into the town or to the city.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is finding out in retrospect when the guy's like, I'm hurt. And he just fucking floored it and went straight at him. It's because they did the same shit. Like, it's like, that's like a tactic that he used before. So he knew right away that this wasn't going to end well.
The show is doing this, but in the game, you definitely get the sense that Joel and Tess were not the good guys. They were smugglers and raiders and all of that. And I mean, you understand it in this context of the setting that everybody's just doing what they have to do to survive, right? Mm-hmm. And otherwise good people will do bad things when survival is on the line. It's, that's human history. And you definitely get that sense that when Joel and Tess and Tommy and their little gang were together, they were maybe not the good guys.
Right. But do other humans just automatically kill you though? Like they were like if they would have pulled over, they probably just would have robbed him, right? Or would they have killed him, do you think?
In the game does a good job of letting you know when the humans you run into are going to try to kill you and when they're not.
Yeah.
So you don't just run around killing every human you see. In certain settings, definitely any human there is going to try to kill you. So I think in the game context, this kind of thing where you get run off the road, they're going to kill you and take all your stuff.
Right. And then, it was a nice little shootout they had there. And then
by the way, I said this to Janae as we were watching it, and neither of us are really like gun guy, but both of us have some familiarity with firearms. I mean, you were in the military, obviously. Well, I'm watching Joel, and he pulls out that gun, and I'm like, I saw all the guns that were on the wall at Bill's house. The last gun I would have taken is a bolt-action rifle without a scope.
So
like,
I was confused about that because, and I thought he got more guns. Didn't he get more guns?
But they're back in the truck.
They're back in the truck. But why'd he pull that one out?
I don't know. That's what I was saying too. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if it's a hunting rifle with a nice scope on it, then I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
But it's a bolt action rifle with iron sights.
Yeah.
That's like the least convenient firearm you could possibly have.
If you have like a Beretta Hell Canyon 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that, you pull that guy out.
Look, the ultimate apocalypse weapon for me is the simple AR-15, man. It's easy to maintain. It's easy to use. They last forever. You got a 30-round magazine.
But you need something a little longer range. You need some short range, long range, medium range, and then short range.
I think you are unlikely to get in a gunfight that an AR-15 cannot reach out and touch.
But you're going to need to get food. You're going to need to...
Yeah, and obviously a deer rifle. But I'm just saying, like, if I'm wandering the post-apocalypse and there's, like, fucking zombies and raiders coming after me...
Yeah, you're not taking the bolt action.
I am carrying an assault rifle.
Yeah. And then, then we get to Brian's death. And I imagine there was a few new characters on this episode, and there's Kathleen, and I would imagine that was her son, Brian.
I don't think so, but maybe. Because these are characters that I don't remember from the game. I don't think they're from the game.
I don't think Kathleen was in the game. I think I read somewhere that she was in the game. But there was something that made me think that he was her son. Oh, because he was saying, "Just get me back to my mother.
Get me back to my mother." Yeah.
And then when she comes out and sees him, and it's played by Melanie Lansky. Did you ever see Heavenly Creatures or the first season of Fargo?
Yeah, both of them. Yep.
Okay, she's fantastic. She is
great.
Fan of hers.
And what I love about her is she's got a really interesting look. She is not the typical Hollywood actor look, right? I mean, she's got this kind of interesting, cute, but a little weird look to her. But she's a fantastic actor. And I love that she gets these kinds of parts.
Yeah.
Like I want more actors like this.
And I've said this before, but what I love about this show is like there's still like remnants of their humanity, of like who they were before. And so even when she's standing there questioning the doctor about this Henry guy, she's really been out of shape about this Henry guy. Because they find themselves, like Joel and Ellie kind of find themselves in the middle of some other power struggle going on.
Yes.
And so she's questioning the doctor. And when he said, "I deliver you," I mean, you see her breaking in the inside. It's torturing her. And so, and you feel that there's no way that she's going to be able to do this. And then when she goes out, and I think that's her son, and then she's like, "Fuck it," and it turns her, right? You know, she holds it together in front of people.
She says, "If I could get him to a doctor," and she's saying, "Is the doctor still useful? Can the doctor save this kid?" And when he says, "There's no chance," then she just goes and shoots the doctor.
Yeah. And, you know, Henry must have ratted on her brother or something, because she does not like fucking Henry.
Well, so what's interesting is Henry and Sam are characters in the game, but the rest of these people are not, as I recall. And my memory could be a little fuzzy, but so the Henry and Sam characters are definitely characters you run into and will interact with in the game, and are, I think, going to be important characters in the show going forward. But this connection of Henry to this like leader of this other group, I think that's just in the show. I think, and that's what I was talking about with Adaptation, is they've taken characters that you run into in the game and are important in the game, and they've added this other layer where now Henry is on the run from this woman and her gang, and they've added that extra level of complication. So that's what I find very interesting about what they're doing with the adaptation here.
And I guess I read somewhere that Kathleen's right-hand man is played by Jeffrey Pierce. Name's Perry, and he was a voice on the game. He played Tommy in the video game.
Oh, was that the voice of Tommy? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the voice of Tommy, which is pretty cool. That's cool. They'll throw some, you know, things like that and have it in there.
It's funny when you watch shows like this. Whenever I see the old gray-haired, gray-bearded dude who's still in really good physical shape and wearing all the tactical gear, I am scared of that dude.
Right.
that guy, like you know, that's the guy you find out was like a Marine for 20 years.
Right.
And,
right. You remember that movie with Kurt Russell when they're on that garbage planet and they have all these new soldiers that are all souped up and they're all jacked up on and he kills them all. You know, there is
Wasn't
that,
it called
like,
Soldier?
I think it was called Soldier.
I think it was called Soldier, yeah.
There's something about experience that you just can't take, you know, they just can't take away. Like you see the old guys on the jiu-jitsu mat just smoking these young, you know, college wrestler guys or whatever. And it's like, they just have knowledge, right? They know how to slow them down and just suck the energy out of them.
Well, so there's one of my favorite movies is a movie called Way of the Gun. You ever seen Way of the Gun?
Yes, yeah.
That's
one of your favorite
movies? Movie Christopher McQuarrie ever directed.
Yeah, that's Benicio del Toro.
Benicio del Toro, and Ryan Philippe. But there's a scene in there where James Caan is playing like the heavy hitter for this gangster, and he's talking to these two young hitmen kind of guys, and he says to him, and he, you know, it's old James Caan, so he's really stiff and kind of whatever, and he's talking to him, and he says, "You know, the only thing you know for sure when you see an old man in this line of work, he's a survivor." And it's so threatening. It's like, I've seen people like you before. They're gone. I'm still here. Don't fuck around.
Right.
And so when I see these old guys like this Perry character, like the old dude with the gray hair, the gray beard, but he's still in good shape. He's still keeping fit. He's got all the tactical gear.
He knows how to hold a gun.
He knows how to go. It looks like he knows what he's doing with that AR-15. And I look at that guy to go, that's the guy you don't fuck with. Because he spent 20 years as a Marine. He was in Iraq. He was in Afghanistan. You don't mess with that guy.
Yeah. You know, Brian's death, it reminds me of the Jesse James movie with Brad Pitt, the assassination of Jesse James.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the shootout when he goes up in the room and Jeremy Renner like runs out on the roof and it's just so clumsy and brutal and violent and painful. And every now and then, and when they you know, they shot Brian in the stomach.
Well, she shot him in the spine.
Or the spine.
Because he's saying, I can't feel my legs. I can't use my legs.
Oh, she shot him in the back from the spine. but the way that he was like begging for his life. I mean, it wasn't like an actor being like a tough guy, you know, like begging for his life. He was like, you know, please just give me my mom, you know, and hey, I'm Brian. Like he's trying to humanize himself. He's doing all these gimmicks and everything to stay alive. And it was so
He's apologizing for attacking them.
Yeah, apologizing.
He said, and my people will trade with you.
Yeah,
we'll be nice to you. Yeah,
and all those things. And it just made it so much, it made it so much harsher. It was such a real death.
And then the sound of Joel killing him with the knife. Because you know he kills him with the knife because you don't hear a gunshot, and then later when they take out his body, he's got that big knife wound over his heart.
Yeah,
the sound of it is it's brutal. Like, it's fucking brutal.
Yeah, and you know, Ellie, you see a combination of somebody who's been through a lot. Like, there's a lot of secrets that she has that we don't know. Like, how did she get infected? She does admit, you know, that she's killed someone before.
Yep,
but there's something fascinating to her about the gun. There's something fascinating about being able to handle yourself. And there's something about Joel that she admires in him. Yep. But then she's also a child. Like there's also, you know, she was like coming to terms with that guy being killed. She when he told her to leave, she didn't say, no, I'm going to stay here and watch it. She did leave and not watch him get killed.
Which, by the way, I really liked that beat. I thought that was interesting because it's not what you expect.
Yeah.
When he said, go behind the wall again, my brain is waiting for her to go, no, I don't want to leave. I need to stay here. She doesn't say a word. She just turns around, goes, climbs through the wall, and leans against the wall and waits.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic beat.
And continued where he was like, shit, she's a girl, a little, you know, she's a kid. She hasn't seen anything like this, and she did this, and it was my fault. Like he's putting him on himself.
Yeah.
And eventually she's like, this isn't my first time. I've done this before. And there's a lot of, like, they're revealing themselves piece by piece. I mean, he talks about his brother Tommy in the car. And I think that's the first unfunctional conversation that they've had where he's contributing to the conversation. And he kind of goes into talking about Tommy.
And it's stuff they hinted at right from the very first episode, because when Tommy comes and picks Joel up to take him to work, as they're driving away, the back of Tommy's truck has the combat veteran sticker on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like, you know, Tommy was in the army, you know, he's a combat veteran.
Yeah.
Right from that very first episode.
What's interesting is Joel says, you know, he has this hero syndrome. He's got to go rescue, and he wants to try to rescue the world and everything like that.
Well, he says he's a joiner. Tommy was always a joiner.
And joining things where he wanted to join the army. And then when the pandemic happened, he was joining these groups and kind of dragging Joel with him. But in some ways, Joel is that guy to his brother. He's the guy, he called him from prison. He's like, you know, I'm in jail. And he's like, all right, I'll go get you. And then right now, it's like, I'm the one that's got to save him. So he kind of has that hero complex with his brother and going to save him.
I think Joel places enormous value on family. Tommy likes to join big causes and be part of a big cause. Joel, once he accepts you as family, you're locked in. Like, I think that's why it was so devastating for him when Sarah died, because family is like number one most important thing to Joel. So like Tess had become family. Tommy is family. And I think as the show goes on and as the game went on, as Ellie becomes more and more family for Joel, he will go to increasingly greater lengths to protect her, because that's his move. Once he accepts you as family, you're in, you're locked in, and he's going to like go through hell or high water to protect you. And I think that's what's happening with Tommy right now is Tommy is the only family Joel has left. So he will do anything to try to protect him. Yeah.
And you can see that through the evolutions of the puns, you know, when in the beginning, he's like, just stop. And then he slowly starts to enjoy it over time. And then he even guesses one about the scarecrow in the field.
Yep.
And then there's such a nice completion to this episode, to their relationship at the end, when she says, did you know diarrhea was hereditary? And he goes, what? She said, it runs in your genes. and despite himself, he breaks and he laughs. And I think that's the first time we've ever seen him laugh.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's so stupid. And he doesn't want to laugh, but he fucking laughs. And she loves it. You know, and she loves those puns. And there's something so endearing about the joy that she gets from those puns that they have there.
I loved, I mean, obviously this has been happening over a couple episodes, but I love the slow build of the relationship. It was the same in the game. I loved the slow build of the relationship in the game. And there's a moment in the game, which they haven't done in the show yet, and I'm hoping that they do, that where they really turn the corner and Joel kind of falls in love with Ellie as this surrogate daughter character, you know, because obviously the death of Sarah means that there's a hole in Joel's life that Ellie can just plug right into, right?
A daughter-shaped hole,
a daughter-shaped hole. But they haven't gotten to that moment yet. But we're evolving toward that moment. And the scene with the gun is really interesting to me. He sees, she uses it. She kills the guy. So now he knows she has it. He takes it from her. He checks it, clears the breach, all that stuff. And then he looks at her and he goes, hold it. And then she puts her finger on the side and he goes, oh, where'd you learn to do that? And she's like, well, I went to Fedra camp. And then he reloads and he puts the thing in and he hands it back to her and he's like, put it in your pack. Don't shoot your ass off. But like, there's like this respect of like, you know what? I can't protect you from this world. I can't protect you from the things you're going to have to do. You should at least be able to take care of yourself.
But it's also, it's an ultimate gesture in trust.
Yeah.
It's saying, okay, I trust you. I trust you. And that was a big moment in the episode. They're so smart in how they set this up because she's like, can I have a gun? No. Can I have a gun? No. And she can't have a gun, but he's at a point now with everything they've been through that he's saying, okay, I feel like I can trust you. And here's this gun.
If somebody just saved you from being murdered,
I know,
by shooting somebody, you got to be like, well, okay, I guess you do need a gun because I would be dead if you didn't have one.
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty stupid to be like, okay, I know you saved me, but give me the gun because I'm the one that needs to have the gun to protect you. Oh, what the fuck is that thing underneath the floor?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have some guesses based on game stuff. I have some guesses what it is, but I don't know what the show is going to do. I'm curious. I love that they've set that up. I love the sort of hint of it. When she says, don't tell anybody, we'll deal with this after. Janae said to me, like, why aren't they dealing with that right now? That seems like a problem. And she's like, and the lady, she's like, lock the building up. I'm like, I would burn that building down.
Yeah.
I would be rolling barrels of gasoline into that building and just burning that whole fucking thing down.
Something not good is going on underneath there. And Harry is like, we need to tell the others, like, she's obsessed. Like, she seems like she's tunnel vision on Henry.
She is tunnel visioned on Henry. Yep.
Yeah, because she's like, I just need time. I just need to fucking figure this out and everything.
Yeah.
And then we meet, I assume that's Henry and Sam at the end.
That's Henry and Sam. Yep.
Yeah. It was a nice little detail because Joel, they let you know that he can't hear out of his right ear, right? And so he's sleeping on his right side in his right ear. And then when the gun's pointing his face, he's on his left ear. So he didn't hear them show up. Right. Little details like that I just love, like little smart details of like they wouldn't have snuck up on him if he had his good ear to the sky.
And by the way, when she says, did you lose your hearing because you got shot there? And he says, no, it's mostly because I was shooting. For those of you who are going out to the shooting range or plinking with your friends in the woods, bring hearing protection. You will make yourself deaf firing guns without it.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
There's lots of little things. I love that when we see the place where Henry and Sam were holed up, there's lots of drawings of superheroes. And then when Henry and Sam show up at the end, Sam has the painted on hero mask on his face. So you immediately know who he is, that he's the one that she's looking for. Nice little touches like that.
What is Henry and Sam's story in the game?
Well, I don't want to go into that because there's some really interesting fun stuff coming up because in a lot of ways, Henry and Sam are Joel and Ellie. They're another version of that relationship. It's the father and the son trying to survive in the apocalypse. It's not too much of a spoiler to say that Joel and Henry and Sam and Ellie are going to find each other interesting. So we'll see how that develops in the next episode. I know how it develops in the game, but I don't want to spoil the show. But it gives you, it's sort of like gives you a mirror of yourself, right? It's like, oh, here's another father-son or father-daughter kind of relationship, also in the same situation, also in this post-apocalyptic world. Here's how they're getting along.
It's like Anchorman when they're walking through the park and they see the exact same replica of them walking back the other way, and they get.
Oh yeah,
you know.
My favorite scene in Anchorman is where all the different news teams fight. They rumble in the...
and then they rumble, the other news teams rumble. And then Shaun of the Dead, when they run into a group.
Yeah.
And it's like they're having their own apocalypse with their own group of friends, and they're identical to that group of friends.
So, if you watched the old stuff that those guys did with each other, the woman who's the leader of the other gang was the other main character in the TV show that Simon Pegg did with Edgar Wright when they did a BBC TV show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did a TV show.
Yeah.
The name of the show has just flown out of my head, but
Spaced.
it's about Space. Thank you. It's about these people who share a house.
Uh-huh.
And it's Simon Pegg and that woman are the housemates of this house.
Is it a comedy, the show?
It's a comedy, yeah. And she's like his roommate in that show. So when they run into each other, it's like running into his former roommate is what they're implying.
Is that how they met? Doing a show like that?
I know that they worked together. They also the other guy, the big guy, the big funny guy, Danny, he was also on that show. So I know that's when the three of them, at least early on when they were working together.
Right.
Spaced, yeah.
Well, thank you, Barflies, for hanging out with us. We had a good time. I hope you were enjoying the show as much as we are.
And aren't you supposed to tell people to comment, like, and subscribe?
Please like and comment and subscribe. That would be nice.
Make me happy.
We should say this at the front of the show. We never do this at the front of the show.
Yeah, we should.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.